Hi, this is Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington, and today I wanted to talk about the Gibson B-25. This is a guitar that was produced for a while that was meant to be sort of a student line for Gibson, and thus, they cut some corners, to put it lightly. One of the things that I really dislike about these guitars is the bridge. If you have felt the original bridge on one of these B-25s, what you're going to notice is that it's, first of all, made of plastic. And if you took that piece of plastic off, what you would also notice is that it's hollow in the middle. And it's bolted on with a lot of metal underneath the soundboard here. Now, this creates a number of problems, not the least of which is that with all that metal under there, you've got a lot of weight. And the way that acoustic guitars work is that these strings produce mechanical energy that goes into the top and moves the top. And what that means for the metal is that a lot of that energy is being spent moving those heavy metal parts that really aren't contributing to what the membrane, the top, is doing to push air to produce sound. So you're losing a lot of tone and you're losing some volume that way. One of the other things that I dislike about these bridges is that they aren't actually functionally bridges. This saddle is basically sitting on a hole that goes right through the bridge and is held in place by these two bolts, which also, are held in there by pieces of metal. And so this saddle isn't actually applying pressure to the bridge. The way that a guitar bridge is supposed to work is that the strings apply their pressure to the saddle, which then in turn applies its pressure to the bridge, which then presses that energy into the soundboard and into the brace structure underneath so that that energy can move easily through the top and produce sound. Which this bridge isn't doing. Basically, what this bridge is serving as is an anchor point for these bridge pins, and that's about all it's really doing, other than applying more weight to the top of the instrument that's not really doing anything other than weighing it down. So one of my favorite things to do to these B-25s is to replace this bridge. I wanted to use an expletive there, but I'm not going to. This is not a channel where I like doing that. Anyway, so this is the bridge that we're going to be replacing it with. There are lots of folks out there that you can order these third-party replacement bridges from. The thing with the B-25 is that you want the bridge that has the saddle slot cut closer to the bridge pins rather than up forward, because if you notice where the strings make contact here, that is a little closer to the bridge pins than it is to the front of the bridge. So this is the bridge that we're going to be using to replace that. And what you're going to notice is this is actually a solid piece of rosewood where it's got a saddle slot that's routed into it, where the saddle is going to apply pressure to the bridge, where the bridge is going to apply pressure to the top, and we're going to be moving a lot of energy. It's also not hollow. It's also not going to be needed. It's also not going to be needing, quarter pound or whatever of steel underneath it to support it. This is just going to be on there with a normal glue joint. And so what this is going to do is it's going to take this guitar from being kind of a quiet giant and turn it into a guitar that has really amazing tone and projection. I've done this modification to a number of B-25s over the years, and really what it does is taking a pretty mediocre sounding guitar and turning it into something that is really special. These B-25s are vintage guitars by now, and all of them have had a chance to really break in and kind of age into a nice maturity. They are overbuilt, so the neck angles tend to be pretty healthy on these guitars, as well as the internal structure. So when these things get this bridge modification, they really start singing like the vintage guitar that they should be. And that is a fantastic thing, because I really love taking older guitars and really making them as good as they can be. And in this case, these guitars really do shine once this modification is done. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to play a little bit of this guitar with the current bridge on it. Disclaimer, I am going to be using the older strings that are on here, so that will be a factor in the tone that you're hearing, as well as the fact that when I am done with this, we are going to be replacing the saddle with a piece of bone, and we're going to be replacing the bridge pins with bone. So with those disclaimers out of the way, let me show you what this guitar currently sounds like. So I apologize about the air conditioning noise. I know that's going to lower the quality of the audio, but let me go ahead and play this guitar. So we'll do some chords. So what I notice about the characteristic of this tone is that, for one thing, it's quiet, it's very subdued. I'm not getting a lot of highs, and I'm not getting a lot of lows. This is kind of like got its zone in the mid-range, and its mid-range really doesn't sound very good. The other characteristic that I'm hearing is that there's kind of like a plasticky sort of tone to it. It sounds a little bit like if you strung up a Rubbermaid tub and tried playing that, as opposed to like playing something that was made out of like finely aged tone woods. So, you know, all in all, I would say that the tone out of this guitar currently is pretty lackluster. It's still a vintage guitar. You know, it's gonna have some of that warmth, which it does, but it's really not shining the way that it should be. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the work on this, and we'll record another video when that work is done, and then run the two sounds side by side so that you can really hear the difference. Hopefully I'll be able to remember what chords and stuff I was doing. Anyway, let's get to the work. So I just got the bridge off, and I just wanted to show you guys the sheer amount of stuff that lives underneath these bridges. And you can see that the bridge is just a hollow, cheap piece of plastic that's, again, really not doing anything to further the tone of the instrument. It's just adding weight and serving as a place where you can put the pins. And in here you got all these bolts and nuts and screws and inserts and star washers and regular washers, and this heavy saddle that is made out of some kind of very dense, heavy material that again is just going into these inserts on the top and not really delivering energy into the bridge like it should. This is basically just unnecessary dead weight. I would almost say it'd almost be better if it were plastic, just because at least then it wouldn't be as heavy. But yeah, all this stuff is living under there. It's a pain in the ass to remove. You got to use a ratchet set and all different kinds of socket sizes to get all of this stuff out of there. But I don't know how much this stuff weighs. It feels about the same to me as holding like a quarter-pound hamburger patty. So, you know, I joke about it being a quarter-pound. I don't know if that's exactly how much it weighs, but it is very heavy, this amount of stuff, and it is doing nothing but weighing down the top and preventing those strings from delivering more energy into the soundboard. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and get to the rest of the work here. The rest of the work is going to be positioning the bridge and getting that in the right place, and then marking where that bridge is going to go, and then scraping away the finish that's on top here underneath the bridge so that we can get a nice wood-to-wood glue joint between the new bridge and the top of this guitar, and get that placed correctly. There's not really a whole lot that we can do about these holes. Those are just going to pretty much stay there. Unfortunately, these bridges also kind of cut it a little bit close to the bridge pins here. But the glue joint should have enough material here that it's actually going to form a strong enough joint that we won't have any problems with it. At least I've never had one of these come back from bridge separation. Incidentally though, I do not like how close these bridge pins are to the end of that bridge, because there's just not a lot of material behind it to resist that torque that's going to be wanting to pull the bridge off the top of the guitar once the string pressure is applied. Not my favorite bridge design from Gibson. But anyway, let's go ahead and get cracking on the rest of this work here, and then from there we will glue the bridge on and proceed with the rest of the setup work, and we'll see how it sounds. So this is the new bridge that we installed, and it did need a little bit of work. We needed to lower the bridge a little bit, so some material needed to be trimmed off the top, and you can see that I went in and I slotted the pinholes here just to get a little bit more angle over the saddle. The reason that it needed to be lowered was that had we installed the saddle where it needed to be height-wise with the bridge where it was, the saddle would have been dipping below the bridge into the saddle slot. So that ended up having to happen. So we still have a lot of material on this bridge, and I'm pretty happy with the way that this went. Was able to get pretty good action on this instrument considering its age. And it now plays and sounds incredible. I'll go ahead and show you what this sounds like now that we've installed the new bridge. So this is with the new bridge and the bone nut, bone saddle, and bone bridge pins. Again, this is also new strings, so there are some other variables to consider here, but go ahead and listen to this guitar and see what you think. So you can see that there's quite a clear difference between the way that this guitar sounded before and the way that it sounds after. I will say that when you do a bridge reglue, there's still going to be a little bit of tightness in the sound, and that does kind of fade as that bridge joint has a time to relax, after, a number of months, years. And so this guitar will kind of morph and kind of come into its maturity as it ages here, and it will continue to change in tone. But the tone that you're getting now is from a set of strings that's coming in solid contact with a solid saddle, that's coming in contact with a solid bridge, and then delivering that energy from that bridge out throughout the top and throughout the braces so that they can really ring. And function the way that a guitar is supposed to function physics-wise. So, yeah, I think that we did a good thing here with this guitar, and I'm really happy with the way that these B-25 sound when we do these bridge replacements. I think it's like one of the best things that you can do for one of these guitars. The thing that we removed is this, and this is just the hollow plastic bridge with all of the different bolts and associated parts. Just offhand, I'd say that this weighs maybe a little less than a quarter-pound hamburger patty. So it's a lot of heavy material. And replacing all of that with just a standard wood bridge with, none of that extra weight, with all of the weight that is associated with that bridge, like actually going in and producing sound, is a really big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and play out here, and we'll go ahead and put those two videos side by side so that you can really hear the difference, and that way you can make the decision for yourself whether or not this is something that you want to do on your own guitar. do some chords. This has been Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for watching. If you need any guitar work done and you happen to be in the Seattle area, there are links down below in the description to my website where you can find my pricing and my contact information. There's also links down there if you want to throw me a tip. And you know, I'd love to hear from anybody in the area if you want to have this particular job done or any work that you have done that you need to have done. Yeah. Thank you for watching. This has been Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop.